Someone forgot to lock a door. That's it. That's how the Roman Empire died. Not from a brilliant strategy, not from overwhelming force. A single gate, barely wide enough for 3 men, left unlocked in the chaos of battle. By the time anyone noticed, Ottoman soldiers were already inside the walls. The city that had survived 1,000 years of sieges fell in 4 hours because someone forgot to turn a key. This is the story of the Kerkoporta Gate and how one mistake erased an empire. Constantinople was supposed to be unbreakable. The Theodosian walls had protected the city since 413 AD. Triple-layered fortifications, moats, towers every 55 meters. For over 1,000 years, dozens of armies tried to breach these walls. All of them failed. By 1453, everyone knew the walls couldn't be broken by force. Sultan Mehmed II knew it too. He brought the largest cannons ever built. He brought 80,000 soldiers. He bombarded the walls for 6 weeks straight. The walls cracked. They didn't break. But here's what history books gloss over. Mehmed didn't win because his cannons finally worked. He won because of a gate most people don't know exists. A tiny postern door called the Kerkoporta, built into the wall between the inner and outer fortifications. It was used for sorties, quick exits for counterattacks, nothing more. On May 29, 1453, during the final Ottoman assault, someone used that gate to launch a raid against the Ottomans. They pushed out, fought, then retreated back inside the walls, and they forgot to lock it behind them. What happened next took 4 hours. By dawn, Constantinople belonged to Mehmed II. The Roman Empire, which had lasted 2,206 years, was gone. This is how it happened. Chapter 1. The Siege That Wouldn't End. Mehmed II was 21 years old when he surrounded Constantinople. People thought he was crazy. The city had survived 23 previous sieges. It had outlasted empires, plagues, and civil wars. The walls alone were a miracle of engineering. 60 feet high, 20 feet thick, with a second wall behind them and a third wall behind that. Mehmed brought 80,000 men. Constantinople had 7,000 defenders. But numbers didn't matter here. The walls did. Mehmed's plan was simple: bombard the walls until they collapsed. He hired a Hungarian engineer named Orban to build the largest cannon anyone had ever seen. It weighed 19 tons. It could fire a 600-pound stone ball over a mile. The sound of it firing could be heard 10 miles away. For 53 days, Orban's cannon fired at the same section of wall near the St. Romanus Gate. The impacts created craters, stones fell, the wall buckled, but it didn't break. Every night the Byzantines repaired the damage. They stuffed the gaps with wood, rubble, and barrels filled with earth. By morning, the wall stood again. Cracked, yes. Broken, no. Mehmed tried everything else. He built siege towers. The Byzantines burned them. He dug tunnels under the walls. The Byzantines collapsed them. He sent ships into the Golden Horn. The Byzantines blocked the entrance with a massive chain stretched across the water. Nothing worked. By late May, Mehmed's officers were telling him to give up. His men were exhausted. His cannons were breaking from overuse. His treasury was empty. But Mehmed had one advantage the Byzantines didn't know about. He wasn't trying to break the walls anymore. He was waiting for a mistake. Chapter 2. The Final Assault. May 29, 1453. Just after midnight, Mehmed ordered the final attack. Not because he thought it would work, but because he had no choice. His army was on the verge of mutiny. His advisors were questioning his sanity. If he didn't take the city now, he never would. The assault began with drums and war cries so loud they drowned out the cannon fire. 80,000 men rushed the walls at once, not in waves, all at once. The plan was simple: overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers, force them to spread thin, find a weakness. The Byzantines were ready. Emperor Constantine XI himself stood on the walls, sword in hand. Every able-bodied man in the city was there. Even the priests grabbed weapons. For 2 hours, the Ottomans threw themselves at the walls and died. Ladders broke, siege towers collapsed, bodies piled up in the moat. The Byzantines were holding. Then Mehmed sent in his second wave, the Janissaries. the elite core of his army, trained since childhood to fight without fear. They wore white felt caps and carried scimitars and composite bows. They hit the walls like a hammer. The Byzantines started to crack. Not the walls, the men. They were exhausted, outnumbered 10-1, running out of arrows, running out of time. And then something happened that changed everything. A Genoese commander named Giovanni Giustiniani, who had been leading the defense at the weakest point in the wall, took a crossbow bolt to the chest. The wound wasn't fatal, but Giustiniani panicked. He demanded to be taken off the wall. His men carried him down to a ship in the harbor. When the Byzantine soldiers saw their best commander retreating, they broke. Not all of them, but enough. The line started to collapse. Ottoman soldiers poured over the walls at the St. Romanus Gate. The Byzantines fell back to the inner wall. The defense was crumbling. But the city still wasn't lost. The inner wall was intact. The Ottomans were inside the outer fortifications, but they couldn't break through the second layer. And that's when someone noticed the Kerkoporta gate was open. Stop and think about what's happening here. Constantinople had survived for 1,123 years. It had outlasted the Western Roman Empire. It had beaten back Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, and Crusaders. The walls had never been breached by force. And now, in the final hour of the final siege, with the city on the verge of holding out one more time, a single door, barely noticed, rarely used, was standing wide open. No one knows who opened it. No one knows who forgot to close it. But in the next 20 minutes, that door would kill more people than Mehmed's cannons ever did. Here's what happened next. Chapter 3. The door no one locked. The Kerkoporta gate wasn't built for defense. It was a sally port, a small exit carved into the wall so defenders could launch surprise attacks. You'd send a group of soldiers out, hit the enemy from an unexpected angle, then retreat back inside and lock the gate. It was barely 3 feet wide, maybe 6 feet tall, designed for speed, not strength. It sat between the inner and outer walls, in a section of fortification called the Blackernai district. Most people didn't even know it existed. On the night of May 29th, a small group of Byzantine soldiers used the Kerkoporta to launch a raid. They pushed out through the gate, attacked a group of Ottoman soldiers near the wall, then fell back inside. In the chaos, someone forgot to lock the gate behind them. Or maybe they thought someone else would do it. Or maybe they were wounded and never made it back. No one knows. What we do know is this. A group of about 50 Ottoman soldiers, part of Mehmed's elite Janissary corps, were pushing along the edge of the outer wall when they saw the gate standing open. At first, they thought it was a trap. Why would a gate be open during a siege? But one of them looked inside. No soldiers, no ambush, just an empty corridor leading into the city. They went in, 50 men, through a gate meant for quick exits, into the space between the outer and inner walls. Once inside, they climbed the inner wall from behind. The Byzantine defenders were all facing outward, fighting the Ottomans trying to scale the walls from the outside. No one was watching the stairs behind them. The Janissaries killed them from behind. Then they opened the gate from the inside. Chapter 4. The Collapse. Once the inner gate was open, everything fell apart. Hundreds of Ottoman soldiers poured through the Kerkoporta. They spread along the top of the inner wall, killing defenders who were still focused on the fight outside. Within minutes, an entire section of Constantinople's defense collapsed from the inside. The Byzantine soldiers didn't understand what was happening. They were still holding the outer wall. The Ottomans hadn't broken through. And yet, suddenly, enemy soldiers were behind them, inside the city. Panic spread faster than the Ottomans did. Soldiers abandoned their posts. Some ran toward the harbor, hoping to escape on ships. Others ran deeper into the city. Most just stood there, frozen, trying to understand how the walls had been breached. Emperor Constantine XI saw the Ottoman banners rising over the inner wall. He knew what it meant. He ripped off his imperial regalia. He didn't want to be recognized. Then he drew his sword and charged into the thickest part of the fighting. No one saw him again. His body was never found. By sunrise, Ottoman soldiers controlled the walls. They opened the gates from the inside. Mehmed's entire army flooded into Constantinople. The city had fallen in 4 hours. Not because the cannons worked, not because the Ottomans were stronger, because someone forgot to lock a door. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. Mehmed II entered Constantinople on horseback at noon. He rode through streets filled with bodies. The Ottomans had been given 3 days to loot the city, standard practice after a siege. Soldiers ransacked churches, homes, and palaces. Thousands of civilians were killed. Tens of thousands more were enslaved. Mehmed went straight to the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom. It had stood for 916 years. He walked inside, climbed to the altar, and ordered it converted into a mosque. Then he stood in the ruins of the Byzantine imperial palace and recited a Persian poem. The spider weaves the curtains in the palace of the Caesars. The owl calls the watches in the towers of Afrasiab. It was a poem about the fall of empires, about how even the mightiest powers turned to dust. Mehmed was 21 years old. He had just conquered the city everyone said was unconquerable. But here's what haunts this story. Mehmed didn't conquer Constantinople through brilliance. He didn't outthink the Byzantines. He didn't build a weapon they couldn't stop. He just waited for a mistake. And when the mistake came, a single unlocked door, he took it. Here's what most people don't understand about the fall of Constantinople. It wasn't inevitable. The walls didn't fail, the defenders didn't break. The city was holding. If the Kerkoporta gate had been locked, Mehmed's assault would have failed. His soldiers would have retreated. His officers would have forced him to lift the siege. Constantinople would have survived. And history would look completely different. Because when Constantinople fell, it didn't just end the Byzantine Empire. It cut Europe off from the Silk Road. It forced explorers to find new trade routes. Christopher Columbus was trying to reach Asia without going through Ottoman territory when he stumbled into the Americas. The Renaissance happened partly because Greek scholars fled Constantinople and brought ancient texts to Italy. The Ottoman Empire controlled the Eastern Mediterranean for the next 400 years because of what happened on May 29, 1453. All of it traces back to a door someone forgot to lock. This is the part that should terrify you. Constantinople had every advantage. Better walls, better position, 1,000 years of experience holding off sieges. They did everything right. And they lost because of a mistake so small that no one even noticed it happening. One gate, 3 feet wide, left open for maybe 10 minutes. That's all it took. History loves to teach us that great empires fall because of corruption, or decadence, or moral decline. That's comforting. It makes us feel like collapse is predictable, avoidable. But Constantinople didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because someone, in the chaos of battle, forgot to do one simple thing. And by the time anyone realized the mistake, it was too late to fix. That's the real lesson of the Kerkoporta Gate. Empires don't just fall from great failures. They fall from small ones, the kind you don't notice until they've already killed you. The question that remains, who left the gate open? We'll never know. The historical records don't name anyone. Maybe the person died in the fighting. Maybe they escaped and never told anyone. Maybe they lived the rest of their life knowing what they'd done and kept silent. But here's what we do know. That person made a choice. Maybe they were exhausted. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they thought someone else would handle it. And that choice ended an empire. Byzantine scholars tried to make sense of it for years afterward. They wrote that God had abandoned Constantinople, that the city's sins had finally caught up with it, that the fall was divine punishment. But the truth is simpler and worse. There was no grand plan, no destiny, no inevitable decline, just a door someone forgot to lock, and 80,000 men waiting on the other side. The Kerkoporta Gate still exists. You can visit it in Istanbul. It's called the Edirne now. The gate itself was sealed shut centuries ago, bricked over and forgotten. But if you know where to look, you can still see the outline in the wall. A small archway, barely noticeable, easy to miss. Millions of tourists walk past it every year and never realize what they're looking at. They're looking at the door that killed Rome. The next time someone tells you that details don't matter, that small mistakes don't have real consequences, think about the Kerkoporta Gate. Think about how 50 men walked through a door someone forgot to lock, and how by sunset, The world had changed forever.